Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 466, coming to you on Monday, December 5th. We're going to look back at the Pac-12 Championship Game, look forward to the bowl season, the transfer portal, take your questions, and so much more here. As always, you can follow us on social media. We're at Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Our email address, reignoftroy@fansided.com. I'm your host, Mike Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Reign of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Penguin of Troy on Twitter, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back after a extra day. The good thing about the Pac-12 Championship Game being on a Friday, in an instance like this, you have an extra day to sort of decompress.
Yes.
Did it help? I don't know. We're gonna see. We have a million emails to get to in this episode.
It may have helped because I know, just talking to our friends, like Sunday was worse than Saturday in terms of the sort of morning process. So yeah, I think getting to Monday and then having to talk about this team maybe is ultimately for the good.
Yeah, I think so. Here we are to talk about a lot of things. I know that there's been we got a comment on Twitter from Cigar, who said, do we have to sort of rehash the Pac-12 Championship Game again? I don't think we're going to do that in this episode. It is a Fallout episode, but we have so much stuff to talk about in terms of bowl news, Caleb Williams being a Heisman finalist, and so much more, that I don't think we're going to necessarily rehash the should they have gone forward on 4th and 8 in the second quarter. I don't think we're going to talk about that here on this episode, but a million emails we got because the Rotbots are fired up. And when the Rotbots have a lot to say, we want to hear what you guys have to say and tackle that one. So this one could be a long episode. Get ready for it. I think we have to start with a new review that we got over on Apple Podcasts. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you leave a review as well. This one comes from AAD44, who says, love it, and gave us 5 stars. This show definitely gives you hard truths, which is needed to keep expectations realistic. Love the dialogue and analytics.
Yeah, thank you, AAD or AD.
That works.
Appreciate the 5-star review. And yeah, I mean, this is, I don't know that we're out here to give you hard truths. I just think we're here to give you what we believe to be a reasoned perspective. We never want to be too homery, and we never want to be too like everything is terrible, because we sort of live by the motto. We said this years ago, but we've lived by the motto of things are never as good as you think they are and never as bad. So yeah, that's what we're going for. And I hope that you guys continue to enjoy and listen and continue to leave reviews, because reviews do help the show immensely. Our ranking on podcast catchers are directly reflected in not just the quality, like the star quality of our reviews, but the recency of our reviews as well. Yeah. So yes, we very much appreciate people going and taking the time to do that. And also taking the time to click the like and subscribe button on YouTube.
Yeah. So if you're joining us now, be sure to like the stream and make sure that you're subscribed so you can get content throughout bowl season. Other news, podcast news. During the season, we were going Mondays and Wednesdays here live on YouTube. During bowl season, we're going to transition to Monday and Thursday, sticking to the 5 p.m. Pacific time slot. So look forward to that. At some point, we'll probably put out an exact schedule of what episodes are coming. I think we're going to want to put out our Cotton Bowl preview the Monday before the game, so you have a full week, since the holidays are there and not everybody could maybe listen on short rest. So we'll get that out early and then have another episode between the preview and the actual game. But more on that as we go. Let's just get into the news, shall we?
Let's do it.
We got to start with the newest updates. SC, of course, going to the Cotton Bowl. After losing to Utah in the Pac-12 Championship Game, the Trojans tumbled down the college football rankings from 4th last week, which would have put the Trojans in the college football playoffs, all the way down to 10th. 10th. Utah jumped up to 8th. And now the Trojans will go to the Cotton Bowl Classic for the 3rd time in school history to play the Tulane Green Wave. The Green Wave currently ranks 16th in the college football playoffs rankings and 28th in SP Plus. They are the Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowls. They won the American. This is just their 2nd conference title since leaving the SEC in 1966. And the Cotton Bowl, their first major January bowl since the 1939 Sugar Bowl. I think it's awesome. It's awesome that Tulane is no longer just like, did you know that Tulane hosted Super Bowl II or whatever it is? Like, you don't have to like worry about those things anymore because Tulane's relevant again. Look at that.
We love the Green Wave. Their logo is immense, as you can see on our Cotton Bowl graphic. I personally like getting to face sort of the scrappy underdogs in a game like the Cotton Bowl. I know that people are like disappointed that USC isn't playing one of the bigger names. I don't need to play one of the bigger names to get amped up. I think that when you play a team like Tulane, they will be amped up. They will be ready to go. Their fans will be all about it. And their players will be all about it. So like if you're out here thinking that playing Tulane in the Cotton Bowl is like somehow lesser than playing, an Ohio State team that got left out, or let's say an Alabama team that got left out of the playoff. Like, to me, it's not. It is more difficult to beat the amped up Tulane team than the, well, screw it, everyone's going to opt out and just not care about being in whatever bowl they're in game like the Alabamas of the world might be this year. So, yeah, give me Tulane. Love it.
See, I think Tulane this is a danger zone matchup.
Yes.
Absolutely. Not only because this puts SC in a position to have opt-outs. We've seen that in college football. It just is what it is. It's not a representative of USC or USC's players. This is what college football is. If you're not in the playoff or not in the Rose Bowl, which has sort of that same, reputation, then you're going to have opt-outs. It's unfortunate. It's not what we like as college football fans, but I would expect there to be opt-outs. Just be ready for those things. And then you have the injuries. We're going to talk about the Cotton Bowl so much more here later in the month, so I don't want to go too much into this, but SC has injuries on the offensive line. You've got the big injury to Caleb Williams that he suffered in the Pac-12 Championship Game, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. And like you said, this is a Tulane team who hasn't played in a huge bowl game in forever.
Really amped for it.
I mean, they've played in a bunch of bowl games with Willie Fritz, their current head coach, led by Tyjae Spears, who's the leading rusher in the American, quarterback Michael Pratt, the leader in passing efficiency in the American. So it'll be a tough matchup because this isn't going to essentially be the team that SC faced or took out to play Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Like that was SC's pinnacle, was the Notre Dame game. And this is not going to be the same team that's going to line up against Tulane. So we're going to see what happens with that. And
I agree with Kenny in the chat. I like the storyline of two of the biggest comebacks from last season. It is noteworthy that Tulane was 2-10 last season, like USC was 4-8. It's cool that like the three biggest stories of the year, USC, TCU, and Tulane, TCU was 5-7, USC was 4-8, Tulane was 2-7. Like that, them getting to play in these New Year's Six Bowls is big, and we love that. I do want to address, before we just move on, just really quickly, some comments in the chat too. Tim said, "So help me God, we better not be apathetic and act like we don't care. See the Sun Bowl versus Georgia Tech. I'm excited for the game." I don't think you need to worry about that because this team is in year one of Lincoln Riley. They have every reason to continue to want to build and grow and sort of like prove themselves. So I'm sort of banking on that. And I think we'll talk more about Caleb Williams' role in that as well. But Tim Prangley in the chat said, "No win situation. Win and the nation will say meh, lose and they will disrespect Tulane and laugh." Quite frankly, I don't care what the nation thinks about this matchup. the fact of the matter is that USC is going into next season as a top 4 preseason team no matter what because of 2 words, Caleb Williams. USC
Mhm.
has had less that put them in the top 4, if not the top 2. So, yeah, I don't think you need to worry about making a statement to the national media or anything like that. To me, this game is about making a statement to yourself. How much do you care about the game of football? How much pride do you have in playing the game of football? And how willing are you to take advantage of the bowl situation, which is extra practices, extra reps for every single player on that field? That's what I look at. I don't care what the national media looks at. This is only a win situation for USC in the sense of they get the extra bowl practices and they get to show what they've got as far as competitive spirit. And if they lose, then that's on them for losing.
Yeah, I think that's a good outlook. I don't know how realistic completely that is. I want to believe what you're saying, and I believe with the spirit of what you're saying. At the same time, I think that there's a stat going around that Pac-12 championship losers are 0-10 in bowl games.
Yeah, but like
0-10.
but that's my point though. USC losing to Tulane is not going to cause them to not be a top 4
No,
preseason
that's
team
fair.
next year
But
because Caleb Williams.
yes, but I'm just saying, like, this is like if we talk about like bowl no shows or rollovers, SC is very much in that realm of like having all the criteria of like what when teams do that, SC has a lot of those factors at play here, which you don't want to see as a fan, certainly. But like, just know that going in. Don't be blindsided if anything like that happens. So let's talk about Caleb Williams. You mentioned him and his injury. Let's just get to it. In the Pac-12 championship game, he pulled up lame in the first quarter on a long run. At the moment, we didn't think it was anything, and then as the game progressed, it certainly turned into something. As Chris Trevino of USCFootball.com tweeted out after the game, Lincoln Riley said that Caleb Williams popped his hamstring on the long run and wasn't close to 50%, and Williams would not let him take him out. This was followed by Sunday, Shotgun Spratling tweeting, Lincoln Riley said Caleb Williams has, quote, a significant hamstring injury, said the nature of it is pretty severe, and he would likely be unavailable the next couple of weeks. And they'll see where he is at the time of the Cotton Bowl. To which Ryan Karchi tweeted, no doubt from USC quarterback Caleb Williams about his status for the Cotton Bowl. After speaking to kids at the Caleb Cares graduation ceremony, Williams told the LA Times he intends to play in the Cotton Bowl. All right, what do you believe? Where's your head at?
Okay,
at this point?
here's where I'm at. Caleb Williams is literally not capable of saying that he will play in the Cotton Bowl at this moment, because he is now 3 days removed from a hamstring injury. That his playing will be dependent on his recovery from that hamstring injury. And as much as we as humans might like to will things into existence, even the most incredible athletes can't will a hamstring into being fully healed enough to be cleared to play the game.
Yeah.
So, number one on that, Caleb cannot predict at this moment that he will be playing in that game. But his response to this, his idea of absolutely I'm playing in this game, is exactly why I think there is less of a chance of USC no showing in this game, because Caleb wants to play and will be fighting to play. And if he does play, I do not think he will let his teammates no show on him. That's just sort of the vibe that I get from Caleb Williams. Now, if it's a significant hamstring injury, 4 weeks might not be enough time to heal from it. It might be, it might not be. So Caleb watch has begun.
Yeah, this is one of those things I put on Twitter that there's zero reason for him to play. If it takes the game is what, 4 weeks away? 4 weeks away from today.
Yeah.
Tonight is Monday night. It's going to be a Monday morning that this game, 10 a.m. Pacific.
I hate that for us. I hate it for us.
Yeah, I have to like set an alarm to wake up in time. Don't laugh. And yeah, it's 4 weeks. Let's say that he's out 2.5 weeks. I don't know, just hypothetically. Then you only have a week and a half of preparation for a bowl game. I understand that, like, that's more than nothing. But like the whole point of the bowl game is to be overly prepared for your opponent. And so I think that Miller Moss is going to benefit from this, even if Caleb Williams does play, because
Yeah, he's going to get reps.
he's going to get reps at some point, and probably a lot of reps in practice. But I just think that like this is the opportunity to give Miller Moss a shot, to use the Clay Helton-ism, go up against live bullets. I obviously you want to see Caleb Williams, you want to see him compete and all that stuff, but is it worth him re-aggravating the hamstring or having some sort of setback that could potentially further the injury to the point where he's limited in spring and his development for coming back in September? I don't think so. Like I think the Cotton Bowl is something that you want to be up for and play with the best team that you possibly can, but at the same time, you can go with Miller Moss here.
I think it all hinges on the doctors of USC. Like
Alicia, it's Keck Medicine.
Keck Medicine, yes.
The doctors of USC, so much of a better name, right?
It's a better name, yes.
It was so cool listening to the
doctors of USC.
The commercials.
Yeah.
Brought to you by the doctors of USC.
Yeah.
Like that's so badass.
What it comes down to though is like, will they clear him? And my hope would be you do not clear this man unless he is 100%. And you do not let him play unless he has practice time before.
Yeah.
And my guess, my suspicion at this moment is that he will not have practice time before, and that if he is cleared, it will be a bad idea to let him play. So like, please God, don't clear him. But also we're not in control. So we'll see what happens. But I love that he wants to play. Like that is why he's special. It's you want him to want to play, but you also want somebody to take it out of his hands for the sake of his own health.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, that is if the injury is real, according to I guess Utah Twitter. As I put my aluminum ball glass on top of my head.
Yeah, need some aluminum foil hats.
Yeah. Apparently, there's a conspiracy theory among Utah Twitter that Caleb Williams was faking the injury. I saw one tweet that said that as soon as Utah started turning the game around, then he started limping, and it was all a play to improve his Heisman odds, because apparently if you play worse, that makes it look better for the Heisman voters, according to this remarkably logical theory. Alicia, it's ridiculous. I think Utah fans can get in their feelings about the F Utah thing on Caleb's nails.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Caleb brings that upon himself.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you back it up, that's one thing. But if you do it in a game that which you lose, you absolutely
take your hits.
Yeah. 1,000%. Utah fans getting on Caleb Williams for faking the injury. Like, this is really what we're doing? Like it feels like an overcorrection to Utah fans taking it so personally that SC fans talked about and probably admittedly whined too much about the refs after the first game, right? And this is like an overcorrection to that, and it's just like, do we have to do this?
But this is my issue with sports fans. There will always be something that people get in their feelings about. There will always be. USC fans could have not had the refs to complain about. They would have complained about something else in that game, and Utah fans would have taken it personally, and then it would have been a whole thing, blah, blah, blah. Everyone whines. You always try to do that. My problem is that a lot of people, Utah, Oklahoma, Oregon, UCLA, a lot of fans out there outed themselves as being I'm trying to choose an adjective that will properly display my feelings.
You can just use the I word if necessary.
Well, idiots doesn't feel strong enough.
No, ignorant. I think
yes. Okay, that's fine. I would just say, toxic or just like
toxic's a good one, because people, not to cut you off here, but the point you're getting to is the crying thing,
Well,
right?
no, I mean, it's a lot of things, but yes, the idea that Caleb would fake an injury is idiotic, but it's also this weird toxic, like, you can't just let the guy, like, have the injury and be the thing that is, like, you can't just let that be a reality,
Right.
that's a reality, like, it's okay. But then on top of that, people need to then go off about Caleb crying, and even one USC fan in my mentions was spouting some ridiculousness about how it was unsporting to cry or something like that, because there's no crying in football, which is, like, the most toxic thing that I've ever heard. Not really, but one of the most toxic things I heard all weekend. And the idea that, like, Caleb crying was some sort of weakness on his part. And then to have
Right.
it, and Caleb pointed this out himself on Twitter, and I talked about it too on Twitter, that he is within his rights to do this, because on Saturday night, after a loss, there was a whole lot of praise of Max Duggan from TCU crying after that game. And, "Oh, look how tough he is," and, "Oh,
Well, there
look how
was for
great he
Tebow
was."
all the times he
Tebow
cried,
all the times.
right?
And yet Caleb Williams, the only thing I heard about Caleb Williams crying was people dogging him for it, saying he's weak, saying he's a baby, saying he's this, that, and the other thing. And Caleb highlighted that on Saturday, and he was right to do so, because um it's gross. It is gross that these people think this way. And yes, some of them are trolls, but, like, behind every troll is a human who has decided to lower themselves into the scum of the earth to perpetuate these ideas that are just, like, I look at it, and I said this on Friday night too, like, to some of the people in our chat, like, how sad of a person do you need to be to jump to that? Like, I look at it and just think, like, you must be a very sad human being to go there. And it was really discouraging from my perspective. It continues to be very discouraging
Well,
to my perspective. I get that there are sad people out there, there are
yeah.
sick people out there, but, like, the sheer number of them does discourage me, because, like, I would like to believe that most people don't follow those. And I would go to bat that, like, I don't think most Utah fans are these
Well,
sick, toxic
that's the
people.
frustrating thing about me. Like, for me, is that I have found Utah fans since they've joined the conference to be great, and
They're
for
passionate,
so
they're
long, like,
engaged,
yes, and you mention anything about Utah, and they're all
and
there,
they're
and
there.
and like at first it was just all, I'm so happy you mentioned us,
Yeah.
and, like, the
And now
niceness
it's
and everything, and at some point over the and certainly it's not all, but it's the and SC fans certainly have there's bad apples in all groups, all fan bases thoroughly.
yeah, including USC's.
Yeah, but it just sucks because I wanted to think better of Utah fans
I
specifically,
like it
and I
better
still do. It's just this is not a good look.
I like it better when the bad apples turn their attention on the other fans, because
Sure.
then it's fans on fans. But when they turn their attention on the player like that, it's just not okay.
Yeah. All right. That's the latest on Caleb Williams. We'll see what happens as practice comes along. Let's talk about the Pac-12 and go through really quick the Pac-12 bowls. The Utah Utes, as we talked about, headed to the Rose Bowl as Pac-12 champs to play the third best team in the Big Ten, Penn State. I actually think that'll be a pretty good game. Penn State has had a weird season in which they've just been chalk, which is, I guess, good. Lands
Yeah.
in the Rose Bowl.
They're very chalk.
Yeah. SC and Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. The Alamo Bowl is Washington and Texas.
Which should be another fun one.
Vegas, I think, will be fun. Oregon State, Florida, the first Pac-12 SEC bowl game. Looking forward to that. Holiday Bowl, Oregon, North Carolina. That should be good.
Weapons.
I like give me like plenty of those games. I think
Yeah.
that'll be fun. UCLA, the biggest loser here. And like, not just because of the whole rivalry angle, but like, it's honestly, I think, disrespectful that UCLA was this good this season and goes to the Sun Bowl. but it's a reflection of how the Pac-12 just had too many good teams.
Yes.
They go to the Sun Bowl to play Keaton Slovis, who's now in the transfer portal. So I guess he won't be in that game.
Yeah.
The LA Bowl, the first one coming up in a couple of weeks is Wazoo and Fresno State. A couple of teams coming back to LA after having lost to the Trojans at the Coliseum. Now they get to go to SoFi.
It just sucks for UCLA because the LA Bowl would have been at least it would have been just a preferable venue for them, and they get to go to the Sun Bowl.
You saying LA is better than El Paso?
I mean, I'm sure El Paso has stuff going for it, but
it's been a month there.
I'm not trying to bog us down because we have so many emails to get to. We have a lot to talk about in this episode. But can I just also say, just on the topic of USC having of the Pac-12 having so many good teams, Deion Sanders joining the Pac-12 is crazy. Colorado swinging for the fences, huge hire for them. I don't necessarily think it's going to work out personally, but huge hire for them. I cannot fault them for making that hire.
Sure.
But the way that Deion talks, 2023 is going to be real interesting with him at Colorado, rebuilding that roster and everything like that, because Michael Penix is coming back. Washington will be good. Oregon State will continue to be good under Jonathan Smith. USC is going to be really good. Oregon should be really good. UCLA, obviously they need to figure out the quarterback and running back situation, but feels like they're still
UCLA's taking the biggest step back, but everybody else is not really taking one back.
They're still working in the right direction. Washington State looks like they're moving in the right direction. This is the
Arizona.
worst. This is the worst time for Deion Sanders to join Colorado to try and to pick them up from the bottom of the Pac-12, because I think the top of the Pac-12 is stronger than I can remember it in a long time. So yeah, that's just my Deion Sanders take. I don't think he knows what he's getting himself into.
Yeah, we can talk about Deion plenty later.
Yeah.
Let's go into the other news. Currently, is the transfer portal is wide open.
Speaking of things we're going to be talking about for a long time.
Yes, this is going to be a recurring segment on every single episode, seemingly for the endless of whenever. Gary Bryant Jr. We know that he was planning to go into the transfer portal. He sat out the remainder of the season after the first 4 games in which he could redshirt. And he's decided to not ultimately end up in the transfer portal as intended. He's going to stick around at USC is the word.
I saw a tweet several hours ago, so it's probably higher, but 506 players had entered the transfer portal just today. Gary Bryant Jr. was not one of them, and that is a surprise.
Yeah,
I'm disappointed from the perspective of, if he had just not done the whole redshirt transfer portal thing, he would have had a lot of playing time this year, actually. If he'd just been a little bit patient. I don't know if there was something underlying there that needed to get taken care of, but it's just a weird situation.
I understand that opinion. At the same time, look how many dudes there are in SC's receiving corps.
But then to come back, how many
waiting
of those
until Jordan Addison leaves?
Yeah, but
and if anyone else transfers. But
how many dudes are coming back, and USC's adding more dudes?
Well, that's the risk too.
I don't think it's going to get easier to get playing time next year.
You sacrifice, in theory, plenty of those guys leave, and you can just move on up. But you also lose the ability to build up your favor with the coaching staff and all that stuff. So I don't know. More power to Gary Bryant for coming back. We'll see what happens in the spring and so on. Other players who actually went into the transfer portal so far, rush end Julian Simon, safety Xavier Alford, linebacker Taylor Katoa, who was originally recruited by Larry Smith in 1992. He's into the transfer portal, along with Raylan Goforth. Goforth, an interesting one to go into the transfer portal.
Yeah. So Raylan Goforth going into the transfer portal is one part of me thinks this could be good because USC needs to go after the linebacker group hard in the transfer portal this year, and that's one extra spot available. The downside of it is that you can go hard in the transfer portal and not get the guys that you recruit in the transfer portal. So then you're down one guy who has starting experience. So that's a little bit wonky, but I do expect USC to add as many linebackers as possible in the transfer portal this year. So I'm not surprised to see Raylan Goforth duck out because To me, it's pretty clear that he is not part of the sort of long-term future of that defense. I don't know if you would disagree with that, but I don't see him as part of the long-term defense um, solutions.
No, I think if we're talking about what SC's defense can be as the program continues to build out in the Lincoln Riley era, I don't think that he's who you have in mind. But part of that's because of age. He's been around a while, right? Like, he isn't a freshman anymore. Um, so yeah, I see what you're saying, but I still think that he could be a valuable member to SC's linebacker core.
It really depends on who USC brings in.
Yes,
that's the big question.
yeah,
So
for sure. Let's talk
Speaking
about
of.
the other names in the portal around the country really quick. Just run down. Oregon linebacker Justin Flo out of
speaking
Upland.
of,
Wow. DJ from Clemson, the quarterback, is in the portal along with quarterbacks Graham Mertz out of Wisconsin, Drew Pine out of Notre Dame. I don't think SC is going to be shopping for any of those guys. But perhaps Indiana linebacker Deshaun McCullough, Thielen's son, the 4-star edge rusher in the 2022 class.
pretty productive with
went to
Indiana. I'm a little surprised.
Alabama has a couple of guys in here, including starting left guard Javian Cohen, who has 2 years left. I think he's someone, if you're SC, you absolutely want to call immediately, along with wide receiver Trayshawn Holden from a 2-time state champ, Narbonne High School.
Yeah.
Washington State, a couple of dudes too.
We name a lot of dudes here, and I think that the most important areas for USC to target for next year are defensive line and offensive line, along with linebacker. But the ones that stand out just from the ones that you've mentioned as like obvious, just go out and get them. Trayshawn Holden and Justin Flo, just because of their proximity to USC in terms of
Javian Cohen.
What?
Javian Cohen, the Alabama lineman too.
Oh yeah, Javian Cohen. Yeah. Those guys, if there are guys out there who you can bring back to Los Angeles or to the Southern California, it just makes a lot of sense. That doesn't mean you are going to get those guys because they're going to have offers from other places, but you got to go sort of hard. But at the same time, you also need to be able to go in. Like if you could get the center, Jake Renfro from Cincinnati, all AAC, like go and get him. If you could get some of the sort of offensive and defensive linemen that are the key for USC at linebacker, offensive line, and defensive line is not to add the guys who are leaving the big schools because they couldn't get playing time. It's to add the guys who are leaving the small schools because they're bigger fish than their small schools. Yeah. So guys like Jake Renfro could be one of those guys. Guys like Isaiah Lewis from Colorado. The
2-time
safety.
Pac-12 honorable mention.
Yeah, like get those guys for the trenches and for the defensive line and linebacker, and I think you'll feel pretty good.
We know SC is gladly taking a bunch of wide receivers they did last year. I'm very interested to see if they go after the Wazoo guys. Deshaun Stribling and Donovan Ollie combined for 138 catches. Like those are extremely productive dudes.
Does USC need, you know what we need to do? We need to do an episode during the offseason. Someone remind us of this. Of sort of going through which positions USC needs the help in most, sort of do a roster rundown and everything like that. Because like
I think if you're Lincoln Riley, you want receivers no matter what.
Right. But I guess the question is, I think you get receivers that the really, really like the Mario Williams level talents, if they want to come, you get them. Otherwise, you need guys to leave to open up spaces. So you need like Brendan Rice to leave. You need, I don't know if Terrell Bynum has another year of eligibility. Maybe he graduates, but like you need to have dudes transfer away to justify bringing new dudes in from Washington State.
We need to do an episode where we do look at the numbers to talk about more of the specifics of these things for sure. Maybe that's something that we can do before the bowl, or with recruiting. The signing day is coming up in a couple weeks. We got a question from Eric who says, "Can you clarify a transfer rule? I get that a grad transfer has the ability to play immediately. What about those non-grad transfer types?"
Everyone does.
They can now. There's a one-time free transfer rule, which is why Caleb Williams played for the Trojans this year, along with Mario Williams. So
where the grad transfer rule will come back into play is you get one free transfer.
Yes.
So someone like Keaton Slovis, who's leaving Pitt, got the one free transfer, and now he's leaving as a graduate transfer, which means he gets another transfer that with immediate eligibility. If he was not a graduate transfer he would not have he would have to do the sit out another year because he'd already transferred once.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that should wrap us up with all of the news, which means we have to go into talking about the Pac-12 Championship Game. This is the fallout. I don't think we're going to talk about key specifics. We talked about it before in the open. We're not going to rehash the 4th and 8th play. We're not going to rehash any of those. We're just going to talk about over under. You got something?
Instead of rehashing anything, I'll just say over the last 2 or 3 days, I don't feel the need to rehash anything that happened in that game because everything that happened after the Caleb Williams injury sort of is a big shruggy to me. I think there's a decent chance that with Caleb Williams healthy, and Andrew Voorhees injured, and just the way the game played out, that USC might have still lost that game the way that TCU lost to Kansas State. But like everything after the Caleb Williams injury is because the Caleb Williams injury. So I don't really think those individual moments matter as much, because everything changes on the Caleb Williams injury. Or the Andrew Voorhees injury and or the Brett Nealon or whatever. But
yeah, there's at this point it's all a beaten horse, but we got a million emails, so we can talk about those points as they come up in the emails. Let's get to the over under, shall we? We're gonna run through this one pretty quick too. Going into the season, I had a 6-game lead, a 6 over under win lead. I was at 44. You were at 38. Your first over under was 4.5 combined punts for both teams. It was over. I took the over. You took the under. So that's a point for me. Next one was 165.5 Utah rushing yards. You took the under on that one. Locks me into the over. It was over. It was way over. They mostly got that late. They were not mostly got that late, but like blew it completely up late when they had like 270 something rushing yards or whatever it was. See, non-specifics. Here we go.
Yeah, not being able to tackle.
No, for sure. 2.5 Utah 4th down attempts. I took the over on that. It was under, gives you the point. 1.5 Cam Rising interceptions. You took the over. I took the under, locks me into the under, and it was under. He only had 0. Dalton Kincaid receiving yards. I took the over on 90.5. It was under. He didn't play that much. He really didn't play that much. Only had 4 catches.
They didn't need him to with USC not being able to tackle his backup.
Yeah, for sure. And the last one, I said 1.5 Caleb Williams Heisman pose events. Yeah. You took the under, and smartly it was under with 0. For the week, we each went 3-3. For the season, I'm at 47 over under wins. You're at 41. For the week, big shout out to our friend Sean from Mid-City-ish, who went a perfect 6-0.
That's a hell of a line on when such a weird game to get 6-0. Yeah, tip my cap to you.
Big one for him. We go to the season leaders, and everything just continues to get tighter. Here's the top 10. With 51 over under wins, LA Fred and Ocean Beach Trojans tied for 9th. 5th place, we have a tie between Cali Cat, Jay Vandy, our buddy Steve from the Bay Area, Randy from Redlands, all with 52. In 4th place, Carrie from Chicago at 53. Carrie went 5-1 this week. That was big. Steve and Chad went 5-1 also, and is in 3rd with 54. And there currently is now a tie for 1st between Moose Pants
great name,
and Ryan from Arizona.
Also great name, by the way.
There we go. Going into the bowls.
It all comes down to bowl season.
It does.
I love it.
It does. It
and
really
it's anybody's game really, because Moose Pants and Ryan could just go head to head, but also Steven and Carrie and Cali Cat are all sort of lurking there. A big enough week for me, any of those.
Yeah.
Jay Vandy and those guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. Game predictions, of course. Bill Connolly said Utah would win 32 to 31.7. Vegas had the Trojans by 2.5. You said 38-35. Trojans, I said 34-23. We were all just way wrong.
Well,
it was 47-24.
No one was picking a game in which Caleb Williams popped his hamstring in the first quarter. Everything went out the window at that point.
This is true. All right, let's get to the mailbag. A million emails. We got a million emails. So let's just get right to those. We start with Tony from Denora, PA. Hi, Alicia and Michael. This is Tony from Denora, PA. That was an old-fashioned beatdown. They took us out to the woodshed and just abused us. We didn't match Utah's physicality. We didn't match their intensity. Defense spent the whole night grabbing. Outplayed and outcoached. We aren't a playoff team, but I'm going to complain about this. But I'm not going to complain about this season. We've made great strides this year. It will get better. Fight on, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, I don't think that anyone's going to argue that USC wasn't able to match Utah's physicality in that game. Certainly on defense, I will continue to say that I think the defense got in their own heads. I think the defense felt like they had to go out and win the game and ultimately lost it because they were trying too hard to force fumbles. They were trying too hard to make the huge play and couldn't make the simple play. And again, it all comes back to what happened to Caleb Williams' hamstring, sort of forcing that situation. I think also the unsung disaster of this game was simply the Andrew Voorhees injury. It's not just that USC was missing their All-American guard. It's that by missing the All-American guard, they shuffled the offensive line around. They had
they weren't able to run the ball
the left tackle who had been playing Mason Murphy got moved to right tackle. He got destroyed at right tackle. They put in Bobby Haskins, who had been injured all season and really hadn't been integrated with the starting five, and just had to move guys around. And then they had to move even more guys around by having Justin Dedich over to the left guard, and then Jonah Monheim at the right guard, and then Brett Nealon gets injured, which means they shuffle the line even more. It was a reflection of the offensive line. For me, the physicality on offense was because that offensive line it was one too many changes, one too many situations there. So, I think that so much of it came down to the unfortunateness of those injuries. And as I keep saying, USC might have still lost the game, but I think if they lose the game under sort of normal circumstances, and I'll give Utah all of their injuries back too. Both of these teams come into the game completely healthy. The game is very, very different. It plays out very differently.
Utah absolutely had their injuries for sure. I think that the way SC's injuries hit were just so critical.
Mm-hmm.
And to Oregon's credit, they beat Utah with an injured Bo Nix.
Yeah, but Bo Nix didn't get injured in that game.
Right,
this is my thing.
But to my point here that I'm trying to make is like, I think SC could have beaten Utah with a hobbled Caleb Williams. I mentioned this in the CarCast. I think they could have beaten him without Andrew Voorhees and without a run game. But with all of those things at the same time,
mm-hmm.
it absolutely prevented the offense from being successful. And I not having Voorhees in there just completely takes away the run game. And I think that's another reason why you're reluctant if you're Lincoln Riley to put Miller Moss in there, because you're not going to at least have the support of the run game also. And I don't know, they're just a confluence of a bunch of very bad things that SC could not overcome. And in part because the defense was always flawed. And you add in the thing about them trying too hard. I think the biggest evidence for that for me is in that third quarter, which they made a bunch of stops.
Yeah.
But they made one key fail, and it was on 3rd and 19. Yeah. Because why? On second down, Mekhi Blackman almost has an interception, drops an interception. And on the very next play, like 5 Trojans can make the tackle on the 3rd and 19, and they're all going to strip the ball.
Yeah, Bryson Shaw can make the tackle short of the line to gain.
Yeah.
And he goes for the strip instead, and he breaks loose. And then everybody else after that point is like, well, crap, we've already given up the 3rd and 19, so let's go for the strip. And they all fail to make the tackle. And I think it was pretty clear.
If SC has a better defense, you stick around the game longer.
Mm-hmm.
If they,
but
these things are ifs, and SC needs to prevent those ifs from happening.
My point continues to be they stuck around in the game longer than they should have, given what we've seen from the defense across the board. Like, the defense in the fourth quarter was miserably bad. Like they just complete like the thing, everything broke. Like the bow broke.
Right. But it was
But
still
the
a game
fact
with
of the
8
matter
minutes to
is
go
that
in the
that
in the
some
game.
that game
Sure.
should have been out of reach 2 minutes into the third quarter, the way that the defense had been playing at a certain point in this season. So, um, they held on, they tried, they almost got there, but it was again the confluence of, as you said, like Caleb being injured, Andrew Voorhees being injured, not having a run game, and then also on top of that, having a defense that sort of was limited in what they were always going to be able to do in this game.
Yeah.
Have them hold on as far as they literally could, and then when they broke like they had never, like it was a
Well,
snap.
this is the
You couldn't
problem
survive
of
that.
having a team whose process for winning is based on outscoring teams.
Yes.
And so when you can't outscore teams, and you have all these other mitigating factors like injuries and whatnot, um, you put yourself in a spot where it's nearly impossible to win. They pulled out the Oregon State game out of their ass at the last minute, but could not do that. Of course, against Utah, too many things went absolutely wrong. Email from Jack for Michael. I really miss Coach Clay Helton. I'm not sure what this means. You might ask why on earth I would feel this way. The truth is, I really miss Alicia's 20-minute rants on bad coaching. I haven't heard either one rant this year under Coach Riley. May God bless those guys. Arizona Jack.
I'm sorry, Jack. I mean, I'm sure there will be things that you can hear me rant on. I'm sure we'll get back to that, but like, let's be honest. No one. My rants aren't good enough to like make up for the fact of what we lived through for 6 years. So
Yeah. Tim and Ali says, I've been occasionally critical of some of Lincoln Riley's decisions this season. I've been irritated a few times. However, for the first time, I was actually irate on Friday because in garbage time, an injured Caleb Williams was still being asked to drop back and repeatedly punished by a defense out for blood. Caleb was a warrior, but Lincoln still needs to protect him. An MMA coach I know has talked about how hard the decision is to call for a corner stoppage. His fighter can have the heart of a lion, but if the fight has gone from bad to dangerous, it's ultimately his responsibility to call it off. Thank you for another awesome podcast season. The preview and CarCast this week made the Vegas drive so much more enjoyable. This was an amazing year one, and I'm pumped for what's to come. Fight the F on and beat the Green Wave, Tim in LA.
yeah, Tim, you and I are in complete agreement. My biggest complaint about this game was that even with Caleb Williams being hobbled, USC had a chance in this game, especially through the first 3 quarters. The way that, I mean, theoretically, if everything plays out the same on defense, USC was not winning this game, because if the defense breaks in the fourth quarter the way that they did, regardless of what was going on offense, you're losing the game. That's sort of an aside. I have a suspicion that the defense breaks in the fourth quarter the way they did because the offense wasn't able to move the ball, because they were so sort of hampered by the way that USC was trying to run that offense, which was not adjusting to the fact that their quarterback was injured. If USC was going to win the game, which they had an opportunity to with an injured Caleb Williams, they needed to adjust their game plan on offense. And the fact that Lincoln didn't do that is a mark against him. He needs to be able to understand that Caleb has been special this season because of his running ability, because of his ability to make plays and all of that. And if you take the running ability away, you can't expect him to make Patrick Mahomes plays anymore.
Yeah.
You need to ask him to complete simple passes and get the offense moving back to basics. And they didn't do that, and they lost.
Yeah, 100%. I don't disagree. And it leads us into a email we got from Coach B. And I feel bad because Coach B emailed us twice. The second one saying, don't read the first one. We're going to read the first one, Coach. I'm sorry. Coach B says, hey, team, not going to lie. Pretty disappointed at the moment, not with their players nor the result of the season. 11-2 is amazing in year one, writing this with 5:29 to go in the fourth quarter, just after the missed Utah PAT. Gotta ask your opinion. Can I blame Alex Grinch for this? Here are my arguments. All week, everyone has asked Alex Grinch what the issue was. His answer, tackling. Knowing that, it is his job to teach the team to tackle, and yet we did see, if not 30 missed tackles, approximately 30 missed tackles. Let me counter your argument before I hear you say it. Yes, I acknowledge that we did not get the defensive talent in the portal that we saw on offense. That being said, this game did not feel like we got beat, but rather we did not tackle on defense. In an isolated game, Alex Grinch lost this for the players and for the fans. If you say that we need to wait for talent to come in, then my counter argument is this: the USC defensive star ranking is comparable to the Utah offensive star ranking. If Alex Grinch needs 4 and 5 star players to beat number 11 Utah, then he will never be able to stop a top 4 playoff team. So can I blame Alex Grinch for this? Again, let me say I'm super excited for the amazing season the guys have had, and I'm looking forward to bowling, even if we drop out of the CFP. But I'm simply asking, do you truly believe Alex Grinch will be able to put a national championship defense on the field? Coach B, high school defensive coordinator, so I share his pain. I have been in his position.
I'll just answer the question first straight out. I do not think Alex Grinch is capable of having a national championship defense. I think that there is a chance, and it's probably smaller than I want it to be, but there is a chance that he can put a defense that can complement a Lincoln Riley championship offense. But do I think that Alex Grinch on his own has a national championship defense? No, I don't think so. He can prove me wrong on that, but there's only a few guys who do have that capability. I think that it's completely within bounds to be critical of Alex Grinch after this season.
Yeah,
while also keeping in mind that when you talk about star rankings on offense and defense, you're talking about players who were recruited for a particular system, a particular team, and have been in that defense for X number of years, versus where USC's star talent is completely irrelevant. None of these players, with a very, very select few, were recruited for Alex Grinch's defense. They were installed into a defense early this year. And I think the biggest argument against Alex Grinch is that they didn't get better as the season went on. How much of that was injuries? There's certainly a stretch of time where the injuries were playing a massive, massive role.
Yeah.
But also, I would just continue to say, like, at a certain point, you have to acknowledge that USC's defensive front, their front seven, had 2 players at most who are at the level that USC needs them to be at if they want to contend for the playoff. Those 2 players are Tuli Tuipulotu and then a very steep drop down to the potential of Eric Gentry. And Eric Gentry was injured and playing on an injured ankle for most of the second half of the season. So we'll see what Eric Gentry becomes, but there's hope with him. But the fact of the matter is USC didn't have anyone besides Tuli Tuipulotu to consistently go toe-to-toe with the better offensive lines that USC faced this season. It's why USC wasn't able to dominate the line of scrimmage against Utah. It's why USC was partially giving up 45 points or 40 whatever points to UCLA, because the USC secondary, which probably had more good players than the front seven, was hung out to dry half the time because the entire defensive philosophy that that Grinch runs is one of those attacking, havoc creating defenses. So if you don't have a front seven that's able to put pressure on the quarterback, well then yes, he's going to annihilate your secondary because he just has too much time. The fact of the matter is, as Malcolm in the chat said, that Tyrone Taleni was the highest graded interior defensive lineman in the Pac-12. Well, okay, those are coming from PFF, and we talk all the time about how, like, there are, PFF didn't have Jalen Carter in their All-American team, so like the grades on that front are difficult. But also, like, Tyrone Taleni would not be he would be a backup on any of the teams that are going to the playoff this year. Like, I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. I really like his effort. I really like Solomon Byrd's effort. But those guys are not at the level of the teams that USC is trying to contend with. They need more talent in the front seven. They need more consistency in the front seven. They need to be able to start putting consistent pressure on quarterbacks when they're playing the better teams in the country. Because you got all the sacks, but like, you needed to get more of those pressures in the critical games.
The way I look at it, you absolutely can blame Alex Grinch for this. Of course, it's his defense, and the
Yeah.
defense stops with him, and it's got to be better. You can't be 100, rank 100 and something in a bunch of you know defensive categories. And I do sympathize with the idea that this was a defense that was put together from scraps that were left over, but also they had to make do and force guys into certain positions and change things around. You had the very early on in the year, you had Romello Height go down with an injury. You had um, injuries for Gentry in the middle of the season, all those things. And we talked about how the talent level of this defense is like a 3-star defense. But to Coach B's points, yeah, the talent level of this defense compared to the defenses that SC is playing in the Pac-12, with the exception of the high-end teams like say uh, UCLA, right? Like almost everybody's going to have a 3-star plus offense for most of their talent, anyways. You've got to be able to compete against that, and we know that we've seen Alex Grinch do it at Washington State. So why can't he do it at SC? You got to see that. You got to see the improvement in year 2. To Malcolm's point in the chat, who's going to replace Alex Grinch? You got to find somebody better. I think that's a valid question because it's easy to. One of the things that about defensive coordinating that I think is so difficult is the game is so offensive right now, and that puts the defenses so much at a liability, right? Because if you're Lincoln Riley and you want to push and push and push on offense, it's going to end up altering what you do on defense. You can't have the 2008 defense gives up significantly more points this year if they were paired with the offense that SC had this year. It just is what it is. But you've got to find a middle ground. You've got to be better because other teams are not having the same issue. And so see how it goes going forward. But Alex Grinch is on the hot seat for year 2,
Yes.
and you go from there.
Yeah. He got year 1 though. Like and I would say I think it's a completely fair argument to say like, well, who would USC replace him with? I think that's why you don't fire Alex Grinch, for instance. Like this is not a fireable year being year 1. I do not think that should stop USC from keeping an eye out for,
Sure.
If there's somebody who could be an upgrade, keep your eye out. See if
Right.
but that should happen every year. Like no matter how sort of settled you are, you should be always on the lookout for like is there an elite guy out there that we could add? If that's the case, then yes, you should jump on that opportunity. Like for instance, like I don't think that Jordan Addison was somebody that USC was going to sit there and just contact out of the blue and go like, "Hey, we're going to tamper with you to come to USC." Like no, it's just that like somewhere down the line someone thought, "Hey, Jordan Addison is open to the idea of leaving Pitt, and there's USC right there. Caleb Williams knows him. We're going to get the ball rolling," all of this kind of stuff. Like
right.
Just like that with transfer portal stuff, you take advantage of it. Take advantage of like, yeah, if Jim Lionheart is even slightly interested in coming to USC, have that conversation. And if he says yes, then yes, you ditch Alex Grinch for him. But unless you have somebody that you already know you want to replace him with after year 1, you don't fire him after year 1.
Yeah, I just think it's year 1, like we talked about. For the most part, you give him the ability to respond to this, certainly, and to go to the last point that Coach B had in that email. Do you truly believe Alex Grinch will be able to put a national championship defense on the field? Here's the thing: I'm skeptical of every single coordinator. I don't believe anybody will.
Yeah,
like outside of Brent Venables
if you
or
could get
Dave
Dave
Aranda,
Aranda,
like
yeah.
those are the only guys that I trust to put a national championship defense out on the field, right?
And
like,
those are all head coaches for that reason.
And the Kirby Smart defensive coaching staff I'll put there too, obviously. But like I don't trust anybody. So no, I don't think that Alex Grinch is that guy, but I don't know exactly who is because it's so difficult. It's so difficult. Coach B's follow-up email was, "I have to apologize for the angry email I sent in about Grinch. I was frustrated with the game and wanted to put those emotions onto something else as opposed to experiencing them. Good vibes are helpful to no one. I am grateful for the work Grinch did in helping lead his team to 11-2 and helpful Hopeful of a 12-2 record in year one. Looking forward to the bowl season and hoping the Pac-12 has success as a whole.
By the way, Coach B, I don't think you did it. I don't think that email. I didn't even feel particularly angry. I don't think you said anything in
No,
there
it was a
that
great email.
wasn't
Yeah.
perfectly within rights to say. So you're good.
Yeah.
That's why we included it. If it had been, we would have not included it. But yeah, you're fine.
All right. John in Oakland says, hello, Alicia and Michael. For some reason, the loss to Utah in the Pac-12 Championship Game has really depressed me. It may be the fact that the national media was jumping on the USC football bandwagon, liking USC, saying nice stuff about the school, and now they're laughing at us. Or the smug behavior of Utah fans. One even went on the Coliseum Wikipedia page and vandalized it, changing the stadium owner to Cam Rising. It's been fixed. This loss was ugly. Who's to blame for the situation and tragedy? There needs to be accountability for the worst day in USC football. The loss really seems to be a worst case outcome. Injuries to key players and questionable decisions by coaches, all on view in prime time for the college football world in national and international TV to see. So, how much damage do you think has actually been done to the USC football program? Will it negatively impact recruiting? How many potentially critical players will jump ship into the portal? What coaches does head coach Lincoln Riley need to replace? What top assistants would want to come to an embarrassed program? What is a hard, realistic expectation for next season? Better or worse than this season? Can USC football finally, next year, finally win the Pac-12 as it blows goodbye kisses to the conference and open the following Big Ten season as a conference champion? Or should USC just drop football and join the Ivy League? Just kidding. Unless we don't win the national championship next year. Fight on, John in Oakland.
Yeah. Yeah. I get the feeling that most of that email was sarcasm to a certain point.
I would certainly
would say so. Yeah.
Certainly
Yeah, I think that the fact of the matter is most people, most reasonable people will be able to see that this was a hugely successful first season. USC is going to have a player going to New York for the Heisman ceremony. I personally think he's going to win the Heisman. Lincoln Riley is going to get to come into the offseason with plenty to say to recruits about how good his offense is at USC. So offensive guys are going to want to come join USC. And I think Alex Grinch is going to be able to pitch the recruit to recruits and transfer portal guys that, man, yeah, we need help. We need help. And we need you to come and be the guy that helps us. And I think that can be a successful pitch. And if Alex Grinch isn't able to make that pitch and then follow through with vast improvements on defense in 2023, then that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have. USA comes out of the season with or without a loss to a winner over Tulane or a loss to Tulane or anything like that. USC comes out of this season, has to come out feeling very, very good and moving in a positive direction. And to be frank, the negativity around USC from people the moment USC lost was always going to be there. The feelings that people have felt this weekend after losing to Utah in the Pac-12 title game, it would have been the exact same conversations if USC had gotten into the playoff and lost, or even gotten to the national title game and lost. The Ducks fans would be in our chat talking about poverty universities, and the Utah fans would be laughing, and the Notre Dame fans and UCLA fans would be laughing, and Sooners would be cackling as though they weren't 6-6.
Sure.
So yeah, that comes with the territory.
Yeah, it does come with the territory, and then the inverse. A week ago, everybody was, laughing at Ohio State blowing their opportunity.
Yeah,
and they were able to back into the playoff. And any major program that blows an opportunity, teams don't like. The national fans like to see the blue bloods blow it. Yes. So no, it was always going to bleed into that thing. To go on the idea of like John saying that the loss really depressed him. I think for me, one of the things why I think that SC losing on Friday was so soul crushing to having watched this team was because of how quick it happened, right? Like you always knew, we talked about all season, the team was flawed. We knew that that SC was going to have to win games in shootouts. And we always knew that was playing with the razor's edge. And we were always honest about that, right? Like always talking about like that was so much of it felt unsustainable to a certain point. And going into the last 3 games, the UCLA, Notre Dame, and Pac-12 Championship game, there was always this thought, well, if they can get through those, then they will be real. And they get through the UCLA game, and then it's the Notre Dame game for me. The Notre Dame game, SC plays their best game of the season. They look finally like a team that puts together almost a solid full 60 minutes. They look in complete control of that game. They play well defensively. They play well offensively to the point where they're scoring on every drive. They're doing everything you want to see. They're running the football. They're dominating the trenches. They're doing all the things that you want SC to be. And I think that it's the combination of that, and then 6 days later, going into that game thinking, well, there's this championship game, and it'll be followed by potentially a playoff game. And if SC, who knows, puncher's chance, anything could happen in a 1-game scenario. Who knows? Maybe they can, be in the national championship game. Whatever it is that you're thinking, right? And for everything to just be gone in a poof, to the point where now you're in the Cotton Bowl, and now there's like, well, Caleb Williams might not even play because he's hurt, and Andrew Voorhees is out, and Brett Nealon has a leg injury, and all these other guys might go into the transfer portal now, and now there's like, it's the quickness. It's like 6 days later from Notre Dame is the game, and then all of a sudden everything just goes up in a blink of an eye. I think that's the eye-opening thing.
That's why so many things are like recency bias. I just think it's the most recent thing that you experienced is the thing that you fixate on. And that's why it's like, it's always nice to win a bowl game, because then the most recent thing you experienced as a fan was a win, where if the most recent thing you experienced was a loss, like then you're just sort of stuck in the like, well, loss, everything sucks, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, it's just that's the nature of sports. That's the sort of the way it all happens. And you have to sort of like manage your disappointment a little bit.
Yeah. Let's go to an email from Tom in the Cayman Islands. Michael, Alicia, ... Audible sigh. This game gave me PTSD. After the first quarter, not knowing Caleb Williams was playing with one good hand and good leg, my only explanation for the offense being so bad was that somehow the love child of T. Martin and Clay Helton took over the play calling for Lincoln Riley. With that said, I feel bad for you guys because we have to deal with the nonsense that is social media. I went on to the Reddit CFB forum for all of 30 seconds before deciding, nope, not happening. I can't imagine how annoying it must be to have to listen to the tired narrative of USC buying players with an NIL that didn't exist until 2 months before the season even started, or that USC is all Hollywood soft, and that there is some moral high ground to living in Norman, Oklahoma, or some other non-coastal city town. Like Michael, I thought USC would be 9-3, assuming they'd lose to Utah, one of UCLA, Notre Dame, drop a clunker somewhere early in the season, and I would have been happy with that. Last night was a tough pill to swallow against a really good team, but listening to your podcast and thinking more on it today put things into perspective. USC is still ahead of schedule. Hopefully this can be parlayed into a good recruiting/transfer class. Transfer class, fingers crossed on some good defensive guys up front being available in the portal, because good high school recruits won't be enough to fix the defense. Sorry for the rant, but thank you again for what you do. Keep up the amazing work. But on Tom in the Cayman Islands. I think it's a good email.
Yeah, I think pretty much sums up a lot of the things that I feel. It was, it's tough. I was telling our Rot Hates Yours Days chat, our text chat, that I was listening to a podcast, and the girl, totally unrelated, the girl in the podcast was talking about like the advice that her dad gave her or something like that. That was like, faith is the hardest thing to embrace, because it means sort of believing and trusting in something without certainty around it, like without being able to say for sure that something's going to happen. You just have to sort of put faith in it. And I think that one of the things that depressed me about that game is like, I had extreme faith that USC was going to be able to win that game. Right. Because of what we had seen from Caleb Williams, what we had seen from the defense being opportunistic, what we had seen from the offense.
What
from
you had
Austin
seen in
Jones.
the first quarter.
Well, and I think that's
the first 20 minutes.
And your sort of whole thing about like, and then poof, it's gone. Like, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And to me, it really does come down to USC was going to
It could have been
it
24
was
to
going to be
3
24 to
and then
3,
poof.
and then poof, it's gone. And that's why I
Yeah.
continue to like, I will get trolled by Duck fans and Utah fans to the end of the earth. That's fine. You guys can think what you think. But Caleb Williams playing on an injured hamstring in that game changes that game. I think USC at worst loses a very close game that possibly goes into overtime if it's a Cam Rising Caleb Williams battle again. The fact that he's injured basically takes the game to a different level. The
Yeah.
fact that Lincoln Riley didn't adjust his game plan is a very big reason why USC lost that game. But like the USC that I put my faith in was one that had Andrew Voorhees on offensive line and Caleb Williams quarterbacking, and a defense that wasn't trying like that hard to do whatever they decided to do. So I think it's hard to have your faith shaken in the way that you sort of lose everything in that game. But the nice thing about faith too is that my faith was not just in Caleb Williams being good enough to win the Pac-12 for USC, or for Andrew Voorhees leading the offensive line to have a good rushing performance, or for the defense to gut it out and try their hardest and be just enough for what USC needed to win that game. It wasn't just that.
Sure.
My faith is in the direction of the program. Lincoln Riley has given me the faith that this program is in good hands. And that's why I keep laughing that like we have Oklahoma fans come into our chat all the time now and say like, well, this is just like Oklahoma. Like this is just like Oklahoma. And I look at them and I just go like, Oklahoma fans, do you realize that like if you told me right now I could have 5 years at USC of what Oklahoma just experienced in the last 5 years, before Lincoln Riley left, if I would sign up for that, like, yes, I would sign up for that. Y'all didn't experience the Clay Helton era. Like, you think that the Lincoln Riley experience of winning 10 games every year and being in a spot to go to the playoff and maybe have something special happen isn't something that I would bite your hand off to get? Yes, I would. So, like, it's not the burn that you think it is.
Well, the flip side for me is like the idea that year one is the referendum on the entire era.
Yeah.
And part of that is a huge testament, honestly, to Lincoln Riley, because he ended up matching in year one what he did at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Because he did it so quickly. So that is a testament to like how good he is as a coach to get back to that same level. But at the same time, like, yes, he has a problem with defense. Certainly. Yeah, for sure. Like, but he also is allowed to be able to grow as a head coach.
Yes.
And he's been at 1 year at this new university. Like, we're not going to like just decide that he has no ability to ever coach, a defense worth a damn because of 1 year at the new school.
39 years old.
Right.
Like,
well, look at Lane Kiffin, right? Like
how much better he's gotten 10 years into being a head coach. Yeah.
Right. Lane Kiffin at USC now would be considerably better than Lane Kiffin from 2010.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin with the Raiders in 2008. Like it's hilarious to think about it that way, right? Like, people are allowed to grow.
Yes.
Let people, give people an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And going 11-2 in the first year after a 5-7 team, after what SC had on the field last year, is like, yeah, it wasn't perfect. It was never going to be perfect.
That's also the thing that I was talking to Kenny about, because the idea that like I have experienced losses that felt like the end, like Liverpool losing in the Champions League, like felt like you're never going to get back there, because what is going to drive you back there? And like I turned out to be wrong, because Liverpool went back there to things. But like Kenny pointed out, like the Suns losing in the playoffs, and it's like it felt like a 1 in a million run. And so when it ends, it crushes you to a degree that is just like, that was the chance, that was the end, and now it's gone. And like that is not what this loss was at all. This loss crushed it. There's a reason we're all depressed. It's very sad. We're all very disappointed, but like there was no way, shape, or form that this is the end. This is the beginning. That's why it's so exciting.
Caleb Williams was coming back.
He's coming back. Yeah. So like
Yes.
it's not even like in 2017
Corey
where
Foreman
like
will be back next year.
it's not even 2017 where it's like Sam Darnold
Kalen
is
Bullock will be
leaving,
back next year.
but like Sam Darnold is leaving, but like maybe JT Daniels will be the answer as a true freshman, and maybe like
Yeah.
it's not even us looking at this going like, well, maybe Malachi Nelson will be really good. Like, no, you get another year of Caleb Williams, and then you move on to the maybes of the next generation. Like,
Right. Well, the other thing too is like you look back at like I feel like so many of those of the gloom and doom from this game, and I understand, thoroughly.
in the moment,
I
for
get
sure.
it in the moment for sure, but is like talking about this game as if it's UCLA, because right now I
Yes.
think UCLA is in a where it's what year 5, 4, whatever it is under Chip Kelly,
This is why our friend Jake was
and
so crushed after
yes,
the
and
USC game.
it's understandable
Yeah.
because it's year 4 or 5, whatever it is. I'm not thinking in math at the moment. And then on top of that, you have DTR in his final season. You have Zach Charbonnet, who's definitely not coming back. And like all these guys, like this was their last opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for SC right
No.
now. Not the case. This is only the beginning. So things are only going to go presumably up from here or stay the same. And like to your point, if they stay the same, then the next 5 years are this, then it beats what the last 5 years were.
That's for damn sure.
Slack message from SJ in Santa Barbara. What do you think of the idea of allowing players to play in bowl games and not having it affect their redshirt eligibility? Seems like it would help rosters who have players sitting out of bowl games for whatever reasons.
This should not even be a question. This should be
Yes.
be the easiest thing to ratify in the history of mankind.
Having said that, I feel like we haven't talked about red shirts in a long time.
No.
And I wonder if that's just because of the COVID year.
Yes.
Because the red shirt rules changed in what, like 2018, I want to say. 2018 was like the first year. And then by the time you really started to care about those things, suddenly the COVID year happened. Everyone got a free season. And so the red shirts haven't mattered. So we might care about that more as it goes. But everybody having a 5th year because of COVID, I think kind of changes that to the point of like, I don't like, who are we talking about? Who are the guys who have been held out for red shirts? I can't even think of any outside of Gary Bryant Jr., who just like made it his point to sit out, right? Like, I don't know. Who are these dudes?
That's something that we're gonna have to go through the stat sheet to see, because like I would be curious. I'm guessing Damani played more than 4. I don't think it matters.
He played more than 4.
Let's see. I've got games played on the USC website. I don't know
if Damani Jackson's who you think he is, he's not going to need a red shirt because like he's not going to be here for 5 years anyway.
Right, exactly. But I will. I'm just going to go through this real quick because we don't have a lot of time. But Sinjin Astani, the transfer, Earl Barquet, the transfer on the defensive line, both of them were at 4 games, which would be, I guess, would if the bowl game was available to them, they would lose the red shirt if they played in the bowl game. Let's see. We've got. Well, this must be wrong because it says Romello Height played 3 games. So
Chris Thompson Jr. 3 games.
Yeah, but it says Romello Height played 3 games. So I'm pretty sure that is not the case.
No, I think that's right.
Did he play 3?
Yeah, because he was going to miss part of the Stanford game, but he came back. And
right. Okay. The linebacker Garrison Madden, 4 games. Miller Moss ended up doing 5, so no red shirt for him. Well, he already did the red shirt, didn't he?
Yeah, he would have redshirted last year.
Yeah. Fabian Ross, Jamar Sakona, Julian Simon.
But a lot of those guys didn't even play the exact 4. What I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
So, but to SJ's point, yes, he should be allowed for sure. SJ's next question is: do you think the strength of schedule has any relevance for teams in the Power 5? Do you think SC should schedule an out-of-conference cupcake as the last game in preparation for the conference championship game? SC playing 2 difficult rivalry games in a row, then playing on short weeks, surely had an impact on their performance. I don't think there's a way that they're allowed to do that, especially in the Big Ten. The reason it happens in the SEC is because of the rivalries. So in the Pac-12, SC and Stanford have the rivalry with Notre Dame, but that's 2 out of 10 teams. So there's only 2 teams. The only advantage the reaction to that is that Stanford and SC have to play early on in the season, right? They have to play in week 2. They have to play a conference game in week 2. That's the only difference. In the SEC, you have so many games. Florida has to play Florida State. Clemson. South Carolina has to play Clemson. Georgia has to play Georgia Tech. There's all these SEC, ACC games to the point that they build in, because of that, the free week at the end of the year. They start the conference season early because of that. So it sort of bakes in that week for teams like Alabama to go and play whoever they want to play, Mercer or whatever it is, right? Like
or Austin
the
P.
Citadel. You're not going to have that in the Big Ten.
They also
nobody in the Big Ten is doing that. No other conference is doing that.
The SEC also has 8 conference games, which frees up another week, in theory. And also, part of this is also just the quirk of the schedule, because if this was a season where USC went to Notre Dame, it wouldn't have been at the end of the season. It would have been early in the season. So then it could have been USC playing Cal and then UCLA.
Look at 2016. SC finishes third in the AP poll at the end of the season, right? But they finished the season in 2016 by playing a god-awful UCLA team and a god-awful Notre Dame team.
Yes, but also...
yes, those teams exist, but you can't always expect them to be what they are.
But also, there's something about the timing. You can't predict the timing necessarily, because if USC had played Notre Dame earlier in the season, they wouldn't have gotten the credit for the Notre Dame win that they got coming out of that game, because Notre Dame had rebuilt their reputation. Is Caleb Williams the favorite to win the Heisman if he doesn't have that stretch of games where he gets to play UCLA and Notre Dame and have those sort of national eyes on him, if those games are spread out throughout the season in different sort of games and all that kind of stuff. So I think that when you try to manufacture these things, you realize that things are way more complicated than you might have thought in the first place.
SC having Notre Dame in there is always going to be put them in the more on the higher strength schedule thing than anyone else. To SJ's question, which is straight up, do you think the strength schedule has relevance? I don't think strength of schedule itself does. I think it's the strength of the top 3 or 4 games that you played. If you play 3 or 4 top 15 teams and the rest of the schools you play are FCS teams, those 3 or 4 games can validate how good you are. And not to say that you want to play FCS school, but you know what I mean? There's a certain sort of balance to it.
Yeah.
That if you've played good teams, that's what's going to validate you.
Because you can look at strength of schedule, SOS, the stat, which is, if I remember correctly, it's the number of wins that everybody that you've played is how they sort of put that together. The Pac-12 is a really good example of how the SOS doesn't matter. It's how many good teams were on your schedule, because the Pac-12 prior to this year got dogged as the worst conference in the country because they had maybe 1, maybe 2 good teams, and then a bunch of evenly matched parity party teams that were just beating up on each other all the time. The difference this year, and the thing that put USC in position to be in the playoff talk, is that the Pac-12 had legitimately good teams at the top who were winning most of the games at the top. To have USC and Utah and Oregon and Washington, to have 4 teams with 2 or less, 3 losses. And even then they screwed it up, because UCLA lost a game at the end of the year that they shouldn't have. So it could have been even more extreme.
SC also benefited by not having to play Oregon.
Yes.
And not having to play Washington.
Yeah. Which
they got Oregon State, which I think is on the level of those 2 teams roughly. But they, Washington State, playing Washington State was much better for SC than having to play one of the other ones.
Yeah.
So, it's all a give and take. Davis emails us and says, "Hey guys, apologies for the long message, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the now official CFP expansion and also share mine. On one hand, this seems objectively good for USC, given the pending move to the Big Ten. So we can now afford to lose up to 2 games every year and still expect to make the playoff, which makes the much tougher Big Ten conference schedule seem a little less daunting. However, I cannot shake the feeling that this is just another domino to fall in the death of college football as we know it. It seems like greedy media conglomerates are intent on destroying all traditions. that make this sport so special just to try and cater to casual fans who will always prefer the NFL. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I don't want college football to be NFL light. College football is special because we're driving to the weekender. It's special because of the sun setting over the San Gabriels before the fourth quarter of the Rose Bowl. It's special because of the Alabama Auburn kick six, TCU rushing the field, the field goal kicker on against Baylor as the game winds down to 0, or countless other moments that were so memorable because every game matters so much. Maybe I'm stuck in the past, and like David Shaw resigning from Stanford, I simply need to accept that the game has changed and quite frankly moved past me. But I simply can't get excited about Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State sleepwalking through their conference slate every year, knowing that they are guaranteed a playoff spot with 2 or 3 losses. Anyways, curious to hear your thoughts, and thanks for all the amazing work you do. Fight on and beat the Utes. This was before the Pac-12 Championship Game. Davis class of 2020. I've never loved an email that we've gotten better than this.
Okay, you can speak.
It's beautiful. Like, I want to frame this. Davis, you're speaking to my soul. You're telling me all the sweet nothings. This is it. This is it. This is how I feel. I saw a tweet. I want to say it was from Matt Brown. I hope I'm getting that right. Who tweeted last week something about like the thing that college football needs to keep is its sense of space, and how like playing in NFL venues, like the Cotton Bowl not being at the Cotton Bowl anymore and being at Jerry World has sterilized it. And I understand. I understand the idea of like you want to maximize all these big games. I think we can sit here and we all fantasize about SC playing a murderer's row of like the best schedule. Like, can you imagine if you played Alabama next week and then at Penn State, and then after that you came home to play Wisconsin, and then you went on the road to Knoxville. Like, how great that would be if you had all these. And it would be great because of our past thoughts of what those games would be. But if that was the reality, it wouldn't necessarily be that great because then you take away what the specialness of those things. And you need college football is great because of the venues. College football is great because of the passion. College football is great because every moment matters. And I do think that every moment still will matter for the most part. And I'm willing to understand that part, and that seating will matter, and that buys and all that stuff will be a factor. But I do think that college football gets a little less special when a team like Penn State gets to be in the playoff. And it's like, I think Penn State's a good team. I think they're a really good team. Is Penn State worthy of competing for a national championship this year? No. They played 2 elite teams and they lost soundly. They don't deserve to be playing for national championship. USC does not deserve to be playing for national championship. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the sentiment of the playoffs, and I get like I said, that can you imagine if all these teams just played more games? I get it. But also, no. I don't need that. I don't need it.
I disagree completely. Not that Davis, it wasn't a good email. It was a good email, Davis. I just disagree with you, and I disagree with you, Michael, completely. Y'all are in a state of mind that you can't accept that life is change and that change happens all the time.
I get that.
And that just because things were done a certain way before doesn't mean that the way that things get done now couldn't also be special in their own way.
Sure.
So, like, for instance, you could take the middle section of Davis's email about how this is another domino in the fall of college football, of the death of college football, but from greedy media conglomerates, blah, 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 blah. You could have typed that out in 1998 and slapped that on to the formation of the BCS. And
sure.
The
and
BCS
the Bowl
sucked
Alliance
too.
Before that.
And the Bowl Alliance before that.
Yeah.
And guess what? You could have sat here and said like, oh, but we like it when we don't get to see the best teams playing each other every year because of stupid arcane bowl things that existed because of regional travel separations. Like those kinds of things. Like there's this nostalgia for the way that things were that are like, it's like this false nostalgia to me. Like, no, It sucked not having teams play. It
Right.
sucked seeing 2008
Well,
USC not get to compete for a national title. It sucks that
yes.
Tulane doesn't get to compete for a national title.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
agree.
I agree with you. Penn State doesn't necessarily deserve to play for a national title, but guess what? They were never going to, because they would have been in the playoff. They would have gotten beaten. They would have gotten to a position, and if they did, they would have earned their place to be there
No, but
anyways.
to me, being in a playoff is playing for the national title.
Yes,
Like, even
yes,
if
but
it's not the national title game, you're playing
yes, but so
in a.
for every Penn State that you name that's like they don't really deserve to be there, but their record says they do. For every Penn State, there's a Tulane that was never going to have an opportunity to get anything that possible. There's a UCF, there's a whoever the heck and whoever the
No,
who, and there's also the teams like USC who lost one game in 2008 because of one half of football from the defense on the road at Oregon State. And now suddenly they don't get to play for the national championship because arbitrary rules say that 1 and 2 are the only ones who decide, even though we don't know how good 4, 5, 6, and 7 are.
so. Oh,
Let me, I'm giving you a full rebuttal. I'm
okay.
giving you a full
Give it
rebuttal.
to me.
Okay. The playoff is scary. I get it. But like, you're not going to sit here and tell me that you would rather watch quote unquote meaningless bowl games, as
Well,
everyone likes
okay.
to
So
say,
this is
between, I'm giving a rebuttal.
all right.
Quote
Go ahead.
unquote meaningless bowl games, as everyone likes to say, instead of seeing good teams play each other and battle it out with everything on the line. Like, I know that it's scary. I know that you think that you're going to lose the things that make college football special. But what makes college football special is college football. It's the fact that you have a bunch of kids running around trying to win football games that they might not be capable of winning. Like it's the venues. Yes, you can give the venues this big thing, but like, let's also say, if anybody in here says that they would rather watch a game at the Cotton Bowl, the old Cotton Bowl, than in Jerry World, they are lying to you. It is a better viewing experience to watch a football game in AT&T Stadium than at the old Cotton Bowl. Guess what? It's better watching games at the Coliseum renovated than at the Rose Bowl in their bench seats. Like, it is better watching football games in stadiums like Santa Clara, where you actually soulless, if you want to call it, but you actually have good viewing
Hold on.
angles, that in the 89th row
You're gonna rep
at the Rose
Levi's?
Bowl. Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I'm going to rep
okay.
Levi's.
All right.
Watching football at Levi's was a better experience than watching football at the Rose Bowl. Yes. Come at me. I would rather sit in a seat, in middling seat at Levi's, in a comfortable seat with good concessions, with a
And
view of the
your
field,
$39
than
nachos.
sit in the 89th row on bench seating at the Rose Bowl with binoculars and still not being able to see anything. Like, yes, you can live in this imaginary world where it's like, yeah, we want to play in these old rundown stadiums, but then you go to like the old rundown stadiums and we all sit here and say that they should be renovated. There should be new things. Like, embrace the new things. They are there for the viewers' experience because the viewers are paying for it. And yes, there's media conglomerates everywhere and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's part of the nature of life that we want to improve things and make things, advance. Like, I'm cool with the advancements. The only thing I'll say against Levi's is that, like, getting in as a fan, going through the ticketing station was miserably bad in the Pac-12
Parking
context. But like,
situation
the
sucks.
parking situation sucks. But like, the
Yeah.
parking situation at the Rose Bowl sucks too. Like, everything about there's a million things that are just like, as Paul in the chat says, try going to the old bathrooms. Yeah, I would rather go to the bathroom at AT&T Stadium than at the old Cotton Bowl.
Okay. Are you done?
What makes college football great
Okay.
is the fans who continue to show up,
Yes.
and the players being kids who are trying to do whatever it is possible they can do. Like, college football is still special. It will still be special. It'll just be special in a different way.
Okay, so where I agree with you completely, and I heard Nick Saban talk about this when he was interviewed with his campaign speeches over the weekend. One of the questions he was asked was about the 12-team playoff. And he said, in this day and age, he's like, well, he's like, I missed what we had because of what it was, or what we made some sort of comment like that. And then he said, in this day and age where the bowl games are constantly, like, we're becoming keenly aware that the bowl games are not mattering because
move the
players
needle.
are opting out and all this stuff. it will be nice for a game like the Cotton Bowl to matter again.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, and that the Cotton Bowl should matter, and the Rose Bowl should matter. All those bowl games need to matter, and it's hurts my soul that somebody would opt out of one of those games. But this playoff at least now prevents that from happening, and that makes me happy.
Yes.
So from that point, if we're talking, if the alternative is you have these great bowl games that like some teams are going to care about and some don't, versus having a playoff where they're forced to care, I think that will help. But at the same time, I think this might the Holiday Bowl might end up suffering worse from this, because if you go to the Holiday Bowl now, you're certainly opting out because it's not the playoff. Maybe?
Yeah, but if USC was in the USC's complaining, USC fans are complaining about being in the Cotton Bowl this year. Like,
sure,
we're not even talking about the Holiday Bowl or the Sun Bowl or the Alamo Bowl or anything like that.
Let's go to Dan's email. Let's go to Dan's email. Dan, one of the if we have a ranking of Rotbots, I think Dan from Valley Village, like,
it's up there,
needs to be up there. And part of it is because when we had the rant line up and going, his calls always make me feel good.
Which, by the way, I'm giving you a project for the off season.
We're getting the rant line
back.
Yeah. The problem is, if we haven't talked about before, the problem is that when we've plugged in the soundboard, and the problem is not having the soundboard, but the soundboard is currently not working with our mixer, and we need to just figure that out. But okay, Dan says, my dearest Alicia and Michael, thank you for being there for me all season. Like a good therapist, you have been there for me when I want to celebrate, and have also talked me off the ledge when I need a perspective, an explanation, and a shoulder to cry on. This has been a tremendous year, so much that the anxiety, nervousness I felt going into the UCLA game, the Notre Dame game, and against Utah in Vegas was too much to handle. And the reason it was almost too much was because I cared so much, in all caps, which has been such a foreign feeling over the previous regime. These feels reminded me of the Carroll eras and how much the pain hurt so much on Friday night. Your astute analysis and grounded view not only broke me out of that feeling of sad that we lost, but juiced for the future. 11-2. What a season. We would have murdered for a season like this years ago. We have it. Let's get trashed and douse each other in champagne and light up those cigars and enjoy. I'm so pumped right now I could suit up if only they took 5'7", 42-year-olds. I appreciate you both, my less expensive therapist, Dan from Valley Village.
Thank you, Dan.
Big shout out to Dan from Valley Village.
Yeah, big shout out. Big shout out. Yeah, again, another really good email.
The top 10 Rotbot for sure.
That is a good summation. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like the difference this season. I told you guys after the UCLA game, I was freaking out. I was in distress during that game, and I cannot remember the last time I was like that during a football game. And it is a beautiful thing to be able to feel that again.
Yeah. Last email comes from Andrew. Thank you for another season of awesome podcast. It was scary to hear you almost drop the podcast. Of course, the day will come, but a scary thought. Can't imagine a season without you, Andrew in Lisbon.
Thank you, and another top Rotbot. Love Andrew in Lisbon. Love our international audience.
Very frustrated about Andrew in Lisbon right now because we cannot play Azul with Andrew in Lisbon because the dude gets to start first.
He would be the closest to visit Portugal.
It's insane. Azul, great board game.
Great game.
But the idea that the person who starts first was the person who's been to Portugal most recently.
Not a good starting.
Major flaw. Yeah. Major flaw. All right. We got a bunch of questions.
Just got to embrace the 2-hour episode again, Michael.
I know. We got to run through these. We're rapid fire the YouTube questions. Rema Murdy, with the transfer portal open. Alicia, you read these.
Okay.
I've read a million emails.
Okay.
You read the YouTube question.
Rema Murdy, question. With the transfer portal open today and several players entering as well as injuries and opt-outs for the NFL, what will our roster look like for the Cotton Bowl? I think with the exception of Raylan Goforth at this point, the roster is not going to look too different. I guess
come down to health, right?
The health is the bigger thing than the opt-outs for me. I think you can expect Jordan Addison to opt out. There may be a couple of Tuli Tupelotu maybe,
Mekhi
But
Blackman, maybe.
Mekhi Blackman maybe, but
Yeah.
the bigger thing is like Andrew Voorhees and Brett Nealon look like they're going to be injured. I don't know about Voorhees to be honest, but Nealon's definitely out. So
I
that's
could
a
see
big
Voorhees
change.
playing because he seems like a guy who would just like he's just so happy to be,
We don't
playing for SC and all that stuff.
we don't know anything about the nature of his injury though. So like I don't know if
Right.
it's short term, long term,
But I don't think
whatever.
there's a need for him to
Yeah.
play in terms of his personal career.
Yeah. So the Cotton Bowl, I mean, yeah, it won't be the team that played against Notre Dame, that's for sure. But it's also hard to say at this point. Oh, it's right. I'm reading that.
You're reading the question. Keep going.
We got a question from Hector. With only 1 year to win the Pac-12, how soon do you think we are competing for the Big Ten championship, or are we going to be building a roster for the conference once we move over? No, I don't think that's going to be part of the process. I think the process is to build a roster that can compete with the Ohio States of the world, whether or not you're in their conference or not. I also reject slightly the idea that like USC will have a harder schedule in the Big Ten. The only thing that I guarantee you will be harder is the travel will be harder. But if you look at the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, like the middling teams are all sort of also pretty weak. So I mean, look at the Big Ten West and then come back to me about whether or not they're more difficult than.
I'm really interested to see what the Big Ten looks like.
We don't know if they're going to stay with divisions. We don't know if they're not. They shouldn't, but
they should not stick with divisions. It's been the problem with the Big Ten because you end up with these Big Ten championship games that mean nothing, even though I guess you could argue that maybe it's helpful because maybe it makes it easier for them to get to the playoffs because
then Michigan gets to beat Purdue.
To beat Purdue instead of beating another playoff caliber team. Maybe that's better. I don't know.
Yeah, and then get to sneak Ohio State in as well.
Because if they stick with divisions and SC and UCLA are going to be in the West.
Oh, yeah, that's not a problem.
Then SC is like make sure that you start to invest in Indianapolis hotels.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's.
I say that now, and then fast forward 5 years, and Iowa's gone five times over SC. But
yeah, but that's why I don't think you can't predict these things necessarily. Things will fall the way they fall. Either way, USC's goal is to build a roster that's capable of competing at a high level, anyways.
Yeah.
All right, we got Touchdown USC saying, is tackling ability going to be a major requirement for defensive players acquired through the transfer portal? I mean, I would hope so to a point, but I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that's like the end all be all. I think you want to just instill that in your team.
Can I say something really unsatisfying? Outside of like Georgia,
everyone tackles back.
Can you name a team that tackles well?
That's the dirty secret.
They don't tackle to me is like code for this defense didn't make a stop. Like if you don't make a stop, well then you just probably didn't make a tackle also.
Yeah.
Like these things to me like are.
Were people watching Michigan last night? Because like Michigan looked like they couldn't tackle Purdue at times, and it's like they look like USC tackling. Well, yeah, because that's the dirty secret. Most college football players are bad at tackling.
Yeah, like it's hard to tackle.
It's hard to tackle.
I'm not making an excuse. I'm just
no.
It's hard to tackle.
We get tunnel vision with the team that you follow, and like, oh, we're like the worst at tackling. And I'm not going to say that USC is good at tackling necessarily.
They're certainly not good.
You just watch enough college football and you realize that like the teams that are good at tackling are like the few and far between. So if you're gonna base everything based on like, can that guy tackle? It's like, well, then you're only going to be able to recruit Georgia players, which they're not going to come out of the transfer. All right. Leonard Avalos.
More rapid fire.
Yeah,
we're already an hour and 45.
Yes. Leonard Avalos. When is Justin Flo coming? We don't know, but I think he should. There's people who say that USC shouldn't take the chance on him after the injury stuff that he had and his poor performance at Oregon this year. To me, dude who missed 2 seasons because of injury now is at a development disadvantage. So you take your opportunity to see if you can get the most out of him. That's what I would do if I were USC. We're going Hector M. Was this loss evidence of the talks before the season now coming to light? Riley not being able to win big games and Grinch's big defensive struggles proving to be consistent?
I think you could say that if everyone was fully healthy and you didn't have all these what if scenarios. And I get that the what if scenarios are annoying to talk about because it'd be easier to just talk in formalities. But no, the idea that Lincoln Riley doesn't win big games, I don't buy. He was 4-0 in Big 12 championship games.
Yeah.
The big games he didn't win were the playoff games.
And yeah, which is not this question.
Again, who's winning playoff games? Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and Dabo Swinney from like 4 years ago. That's it. Those are the only coaches winning playoff games. I don't think it's an indictment that Lincoln Riley hasn't won those.
Yeah. Ramamurti says, how do we improve the physicality on defense to beat Utah and prepare for the Big Ten? I think recruiting and transfer will play a big role in that. It's also mentality. Like, I think you instill that mentality, and you got to do that the whole offseason from day one.
I also think that the physicality of the Big Ten's overrated.
It is. Also, how is the Big Ten going to deal with USC speed? That's the other question that you
Yes.
could flip around on that.
Right.
Hector also asks, has Grinch not already had top talent before and not been able to produce?
I mean,
So here's the thing. People want to complain about his Oklahoma defenses, but his Oklahoma defenses were like better than anything USC has had over the last 5 years. So,
right.
Again, there's levels.
Right. And if you pair that with an elite offense, you're going to have a defense that's capable of winning you 11, 12 games.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Rama Murdy also asked, what will the roster look like for the Cotton Bowl? Oh, we've already sort of hit on that. Glenn asked, will we break the AT&T Stadium curse at this year's Cotton Bowl? Honestly, I think it's a 50-50. I think it's a 50-50 because we don't know what team USC is going to field, what quarterback they're going to field, and we don't know just how big of a gap between the Tulane of the American and the USC of the Pac-12 is at this point. So Michael's shaking his head and saying no. Saying yes. No? No.
I am saying I will save it for the preview.
Okay. Tim Prangley asks, Addison, Tooley, and Voorhees opt out? ?
We'll see, but I think all would make logical sense based on the opt-outs of before.
All within their rights, certainly. Yeah. Randy asks, what do you think the chances we can pick up David Bailey and Justin Flo in the transfer portal? David Bailey, obviously the Stanford linebacker who, to my knowledge, is not in the transfer portal. No. But Stanford is bleeding transfers right now. And then Justin Flo, who is in the transfer portal. I think you got to feel good. Justin Flo committed to Oregon because he was recruited by Dante Williams. Dante Williams is at USC. USC is back home. The only thing that would stop Justin Flo to me is if he just, I don't know, wanted to live somewhere else, or if USC didn't want him, which I don't know. If David Bailey gets in the transfer portal, USC should offer him the 55 and everything else that they can possibly offer him to get him to USC. But he needs to hit the portal first, so you don't know if that's going to happen. Anything on that?
You said it.
Plimadec question: can you imagine a world in which Brent Venables gets fired in a few seasons and we bring him in as our DC? I know it's unrealistic, but would also be hilarious to upset the OU fans even more. I would sign up for that. Would you, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. You want someone of that caliber to be your DC.
Yeah. Okay. Fighting on MC. What about Caleb's hand injury? To my knowledge, it was just a flesh wound, and that should not be an issue.
I think the hand injury sort of akin to DTR's injury against SC.
Yeah.
Where one that certainly makes him wounded, but as you saw DTR make plays against SC, one that a player of Caleb's caliber can still make plays with that.
That's the kind of injury where initially it just impacts you because it feels wrong, and so much of these guys is muscle memory of sort of getting into it. And
not as bad as the booty broken finger.
Not as bad as the booty broken finger. No, Caleb with just the hand injury in that game. I don't think we're talking about the hand. I think the hamstring obviously bigger.
Yeah.
Spoo asks, is there any scenario where we stay in the Pac-12? This conference is suddenly exciting. I agree. So here's my thing about the move to the Big Ten. Good on USC for being proactive and going after the money and going after to compete with the big dogs. I appreciate USC making that thing. If I had my way, USC could have the best of both worlds by staying in the Pac-12 and also having all the money. But that's not the way that the world works. And the Pac-12 suddenly looking like they're good is quite annoying to me. But the money is still in the Big Ten, so you still move to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Randy asks, so what do you think the chances are of... Oh, sorry, I didn't do that. What's our first transfer portal signee? Asks Adam.
I don't know. Maybe we'll on Thursday when we come back. We'll talk about it.
Hey, UCLA had the linebacker from Cal jump in the portal, and then like an hour later he committed to UCLA. So who knows?
Yeah, the Regent's got to be furious about that.
Oh yes, terrible. Yeah. Eric asked, "Can you clarify a transfer rule?"
We talked about that.
We did. My bad. Okay. Lamont, what do you think about the lack of success the former USC players and coaches have had this year? It's clear to me that Coach Lincoln Riley did great work weeding out the bad apples and not team first guys. I also don't know that it's like bad apples and not team first. I just think there were some guys who just weren't up to snuff to the level that USC wants to play at and were given opportunities to go elsewhere. Um, I think that Keaton proved he is who he is. He's a good, not great quarterback who, ran into trouble.
Keaton's a development issue, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
He also, I mean,
J-
you have to remember he was a 3-star guy coming out of school. Maybe he overachieved as a freshman. Maybe we overthought it. I mean,
I don't know how to feel about JT at this point.
JT
I
just
think he's gotten plenty of opportunities, and he's been in a position to um, be developed pretty decently enough to perform better than he has.
sometimes dudes are just not as good when they get to the next level as they were in high school, and sometimes
Yeah.
dudes have all of their confidence and all of their belief shaken, and they just are not capable of.
The other thing is, any player who transfers, there's like you transfer for like one of three reasons. One, that you miss home and you just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's that you didn't latch on to the system, and you just need a fresh start. And those fresh start guys, sometimes even the new fresh start just doesn't catch on, and maybe that it's difficult. I don't think there's a clear pattern that the SC guys certainly didn't pan out, and that necessarily means something about Lincoln Riley and his selection process. I can see how you could get to that conclusion, but yeah, to me, if you players who are transferring more than likely are needing a fresh start, and there's a reason they need a fresh start in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's, I guess in that sense, we're saying it is not surprising that
Which
things didn't
makes
work
the
out.
transfer portal a risk, by the way.
Yes.
Unless you're getting someone like, say, Caleb Williams, who is transferring from a position of high leverage. And not all transfers are the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jasper asks, if USC was undefeated going into the Pac-12 title game and lost the way they did, would they still have gotten into the playoffs? I have thoughts on this, Michael. Do you?
I think they're in. Yeah.
I think there's a chance they're not in. My argument is this. The committee kept saying that they were doubting USC because of the defense, and the defense playing the way that they did at the end of that game, I think ultimately would be the thing that kept USC out, especially if the committee could look at it and think there's a chance that Caleb Williams is not going to play in the playoffs. I think there's a chance that they would have gotten knocked out. But
if they win, then if they were undefeated, then the Utah game at Rice Eccles would have not added to sour that.
But let's say
defense.
it's on one play. Let's say the 2-point conversion is not complete, right? So
I think the narrative completely changes,
but
completely. And I think people are talking about the defense of like, oh my God, they made the big play when they
we're still talking about
we're forgetting how finicky narratives are here.
We're still talking about a defense that would have given up 41 points to Utah.
Were people talking about Tennessee's defense for giving up 48 points to Alabama?
That's fair.
You see what I'm saying?
But people were talking about Tennessee's defense, and they did get exposed by Georgia, and then Tennessee fell off a cliff. So, like, I don't know.
But
it's a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical. Okay, Randy asked another hypothetical. Let's say Caleb Williams wins the Heisman, comes back next year, wins it again. With modern day NIL, what are the chances he comes back to chase a third Heisman? 0. He's going to the NFL. No. He will be the number 1 overall pick, and that will be more than any NIL he could get. He'll get NIL in the NFL.
Let's say, hypothetically, let's Randy, let's say that he wins the second Heisman, and he is offered $10 million by Dr. Pepper to be the face of all of their commercials for the college football season going into the third year. That $10 million pales into comparison whatever $50 million that the Carolina Panthers are going to give him, with the opportunity to make more if he's a success.
Who was the number 1 quarterback taken in the most recent draft? I'm blanking.
The highest rated quarterback.
Who was the number 1 quarterback in the most recent draft?
I was having this thought the other day. I don't remember the 2022 NFL draft to save my life.
Well, clearly I don't either.
The Jags had the number 1 pick in Travon Walker, and I couldn't even remember that they did. No, the highest rated quarterback
Let's
was
see.
Kenny Pickett at 20.
Kenny Pickett.
So bad example.
Okay, Kenny Pickett at 20 is making
Trevor Lawrence. We'll talk about Trevor. Trevor Lawrence is probably the best comparison to like someone who the expectations, Heisman level expectations, draft expectations. That's where Caleb Williams is going to be. And you look at his salary, he's making $9.1 million.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett was it was a not even a top 20 draft pick and got a $7 million signing bonus. Like, yeah, it's
yeah. There's
no. Mark asks, so here's the thing. Look how long it took Harbaugh to build Michigan. We over-succeeded year 1, but it will take year 2 in the Big Ten before we can truly be at full strength. I think that's a good argument too, is that again, to have your full imprint put on a program, you're talking 2-3 years down the line. Certainly not year 1. Jasper asks, on offense, who would you rather pick, a Jordan Addison or a tight end like Brock Bowers? I'd pick Bowers, by the way. No one needs to question my answer on this. Give me Brock Bowers every day of the week and twice on Saturdays. You disagree or agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Spoo asks, are you guys coming out to Dallas for the Cotton Bowl?
No.
We are not.
One of the reasons that we went to Dallas all the time is my best friend is like my brother. Lived in Dallas. Lived just outside of Dallas. He moved to Washington. That's why we were in Washington recently. So yeah, that takes. And
why isn't there a bowl game in Seattle, man?
But annoyingly, they moved after the SC leaves the
Pac-12 when it would have been really easy. Like this could have been home base for us to go to all the Pacific Northwest games.
If they're watching right now, I hope they feel bad. I hope they feel bad.
I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
All right, Jasper asks, deep down, don't you wish USC was staying in the Pac-12? I do. Going back east 4 to 5 times a year is a disadvantage. We already sort of talked about that. Yes, I think both of us would prefer to stay in the Pac-12 if the other circumstances weren't part of the equation.
Yep.
Joe Schmo asks, what about Dante Williams to UNLV? So UNLV has an open coaching position, and they are being linked to everybody and their mother. I saw Bruce Feldman tweet today that Ed Orgeron says he is not in the mix for that, and Chris Peterson also says he is not in the mix for that job.
If you're Chris Peterson, why would you what?
If you're UNLV, you could do worse than taking the swing at Dante Williams with the idea of we just need an Uber recruiter to come in here and bring guys to Vegas. But if I'm Dante Williams, I do not know about taking that job. Well, I guess you take any head coaching job that they offer you if you're Dante Williams. So, yeah.
All right. We've gone 2 hours. It's time to pack it up.
Yeah.
So we will be back Thursday. 3 days from now, live here on YouTube. We appreciate all of you guys, everyone in the chat. It's been a blast chatting with you guys this year and podcasting, and we appreciate you. Make sure that you like the stream and are subscribed, and we'll see you Thursday. If you're watching or listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure that you review. Help grow the show that way. We appreciate you just as much because we've been with you longer, baby. So, yeah, that's it. We'll be back Thursday to talk, who knows, probably more transfer portal stuff.
A lot more transfer portal stuff.
Send us more emails, rateoffanside.com.
Mm-hmm.
And until then.
Tim says he's going to start a petition to make the preview podcast the amount of time it takes to drive from LA to the game. That'll be a lot more difficult when we move to the Big Ten.
Yes. Yeah. I like that move. All right. Thanks, guys. Until then, we will see you. Lisa, final word, like the old days.
The final word is I don't see ya. I don't know.
Okay. Way to botch it. Jeez.
No. The final word is Tulane. because we saw a friend over the weekend, and we were talking about how USC was going to play Tulane, and she's like, "What is Tulane?" Like Tulane, and I thought that was funny. And sorry, Tulane, we love you.
I like Tulane. Tulane's logo is cool.
Tulane has a beautiful logo, beautiful
Yeah.
mascot.
All right. See ya.
See ya.